So today we are going to talk about purity culture, but more specifically we're going to dive into modesty and this whole concept of modesty that we have lived with as women in Christianity. Welcome to the Woman Being podcast community,
where we explore thoughts and opinions
and have the freedom to change our minds.
Without expectation or judgment,
we will hold a safe space and support each other
as we navigate together in the form of feminine.
Today I'm here with the lovely Kelly.
Hey.
And Kelly Ann.
Hello.
And I'm Emma. Welcome to the Woman Being podcast. We're very excited for our topic today of modesty and purity culture and really just the way that women are told to dress. So we all have really different experiences with this. We've grown up in varying degrees of this culture. So I kind of want to start out with just talking about what each of our experience was. What was the first time that we felt like this idea of modesty was being put onto us? And what did that look like as we were growing up and forming our idea of modesty?
Yeah. So for me, I grew up with the understanding that I wear one-piece swimsuits and other girls wear two-piece swimsuits. So there was kind of a general awareness of something was a little different, but I specifically remember in 5th grade, I had this favorite pair of jeans, and one at some point during the school year, they just went missing. And so I actually found them, I think like a month later or a couple weeks later, and they had been ripped, like from the what is it called? From the belt line down through the leg, like just ripped and ruined.
Like down a whole leg?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and so, and I was like, what happened? Like in my mind, I was like, it like got caught on something in the washer or whatever.
Yeah.
And my mom kind of was like, yeah, I think your dad felt that those jeans were a little too tight. And that was, for me, my first kind of exposure to what would become a long conversation with my dad, and sometimes my mom too, but mostly with my dad, about what was okay to wear and what was appropriate and what things were absolutely not.
Wow. And so like how did that make you feel with your relationship with your dad, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I was a pretty opinionated girl from, age 0 and up.
Yeah.
So I mean, like it was a huge source of tension between us. And I remember like wanting to have my dad be proud of me, wanting him to approve of me, but then also, wanting to look cute and, feel pretty and all those things. And so we had several conversations, and I actually remember at one point things were so tense, and he sat me down. He was like, look, like, men are disgusting, all men. And this is what happens in their brains when they see girls wearing, inappropriate things. And so, and like, he was kind of almost pleading with me, like please understand that, like, this is the way it is, and men are gross, and if you don't protect yourself, like, I don't even know, like, what just bad things would happen, I guess. Like, there was nothing ever specific about it, but
it wasn't like explicit.
But I mean, I think for him as a dad, it was like, I don't want someone looking at you like that.
Yeah.
But for me,
that's terrifying.
I felt like a piece of me everywhere I went. I had this idea that, like, even in some cases when I was wearing normal, like, very average clothing, I felt exposed. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
That's crazy.
It really
brings tears to your eyes.
It's been a journey for me, because it kind of went from a period in like middle school of rebellion and arguing over what swimsuits I could wear and, like, kind of fighting with my dad, and then into high school kind of wanting to please God and be a good Christian. And so I kind of flipped my approach, I guess, and I mean, for the most part, stopped going to the beach just because swimsuit, conversations were just too hard. Wow. And I felt so like exposed. And then also, preaching it to other girls and like, never wearing anything that I felt like could be, too, I don't know what the word is, like out there or too slutty or, whatever. So definitely flipped around in high school the opposite way. But I think for me, when I started realizing, okay, this is bogus, was after I got married. So, I was still very young. I had kind of landed in a place where I felt like, okay, my dad was comfortable with the things that I wore, and we had an understanding. There's another father figure in my life who had made several comments, or 2 comments specifically. One on my wedding day about my wedding dress being too low. Oh. And then
that is not the time.
I'm like, honey.
And then there was another comment later on where he felt that my jeans were too tight. And so this for me kind of put me in a spiral of like, okay, my dad's fine with this, but this other father figure who I want his approval too, and he matters to me, but like he has disagreements with apparently my dad and what is appropriate and comfortable. And so like, who really does define those things, and how can I can't please everyone. For anyone that's an Enneagram, I'm a 3, so into the Enneagram, I'm a 3, and I want to be like seen favorably in people's eyes. And so I realized like, oh, this is actually impossible. There isn't a standard because every man is different. And I kind of sort of started deconstructing all of that in college.
Yeah. It's so interesting because you think about, okay, who determines that somebody has the authority to even tell you how you should dress your body? And like, to what extent does that go? Like, you have someone who's your father, which I can see them feeling some of that obligation. There's obviously a protective aspect that he has with that, where he's like, I feel like this is the best way to protect my daughter. But then you go to another degree of separation, and you have this man that was involved in your life but is not related to you, but also still for some reason feels this obligation to say this. And then you have like pastors, and you have sometimes even men that you don't even know go into like the further degree. I feel like that plays into so much of the feeling. I mean, this is going into a whole other thing, but that men can have that authority over women.
And it was crushing. Like, I want to emphasize, like, this wasn't like, oh, someone said something negative about what I was wearing, and I was like, I hate that. Like, it was like so much shame and like wanting to be a good person and wanting to please the people that I cared about. And like, I felt like so small. And actually I had a pretty, this is fun. We could go on forever about all of my traumatizing modesty experiences. So
I mean, I'm sure most of our listeners will understand and be like, this is a woman's story. Like, just women in general, this is their story. Like, it's not just you.
And I hope like that anyone out there who's dealing with similar things can glean from this in any way. But I remember a particularly traumatizing experience. I have an aunt who I want to clarify is one of the most badass, inspiring, like amazing women. So I'm not critiquing her, but she and her family, I had 4 male cousins. They just came off they were missionaries for several years in the Middle East. Gotcha. And so obviously my cousins were exposed to very modest, covered up clothing. And I had a 2-piece swimsuit at the time that was essentially like a sports bra, like a pretty like well covered up sports bra, and some like shorts. And I had forgotten my bottoms and only had the top. And so my aunt lent me her bottoms. And I mean, if you guys remember, like, high-waisted things were not cool. So it was like low-waisted. And so apparently, I didn't realize this at a time, but apparently I wore the bottoms too low for what they were designed. Apparently they were meant to go higher on my waist.
Okay.
And my aunt went to my dad and said that her sons were having issues with what I was wearing, and kind of asking her, like, why is she wearing that? And like, you know, why doesn't she wear something more modest? I don't even know. Like,
wow.
In my opinion, these sort of comments should never have come to my awareness, but apparently my cousins were uncomfortable with what I was wearing. So my aunt went to my dad, and instead of defending me, my dad came to me and accused me of wearing these bottoms incorrectly, and told me like all these things about how my cousins felt so uncomfortable, and like my aunt was upset, and
I'm so sorry.
I know.
That's not cool.
This is
not.
This is getting real deep. I just remember like sobbing on the way home. Like I felt so crushed and
humiliating. Like that'd be humiliating.
Yeah, and like, oh, people were talking about me, and I didn't know
my body,
and they felt,
and
they were looking at me.
Yeah,
and these
you're
are
talking
family
about
members.
cousins.
These are people that I'm supposed to feel safe around.
Like cousins deal.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
It sounds like it's a you issue.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and I look back, and I don't think anyone's intention was like, oh, let's make Kelly feel bad. But like apparently there was like someone uncomfortable, like someone. At least someone was feeling uncomfortable with my swimsuit, which looking back was probably nothing. Like it was a very modest situation. But somehow that like landed on me, as it was my, like I had done.
It's your responsibility.
I had done the wrong thing. Like
yeah.
I had to deal with, I don't know, the responsibility of that or whatever. And it was like so crushing.
Yeah.
So anytime anyone came up to me and said anything about my clothes or like something, like all those feelings would come back, and I would just like feel terrible. So I mean, was not healthy. I'm sure other people have like more understated experiences with modesty, but for me it was like very extreme, where I felt anyone was looking at me, a teacher, an old man, the pastors, like any man was fair game to be like looking upon me lustfully, even people in my own family. So I didn't have a very high opinion of men in that regard. And then I also, you know, probably had a very low opinion of myself as well. And like my body felt threatening.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in a vessel of
sin.
Or like of, you know, lust.
That's just designed to entrap people.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think there's definitely some body dysphoria there as well.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you have to think about all the things that those like accusations imply about you. Like it implies that you're trying to seduce family members. It implies that like you are intentionally going out of your way to show more of your body. Like it implies that you have no regard for other people. And it puts it all onto you.
Yes. And that you're doing it all willfully.
Yeah.
And how old were you?
I mean, I think I was probably like 13.
Okay, so a 13-year-old who doesn't even understand and is fully comfortable in their own bodies is going after other people. With their body.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
It was a big
That
mess.
makes a lot of sense.
Total sense.
I was, you know, really into those old pastor men. So
those 60-year-olds.
Pastor men and family members. That's my type.
Definitely.
Wow. So to continue the traumatizing stories, Kellyanne, what are some of the ways that modesty was introduced to you? And how that impacted your development as a woman?
I mean, I have some similarities to your story, but also I had this level of like, I was a dancer, I was a ballerina, and I did shows, and your costumes get picked for you, and you don't really get a say in that. And so I was also like, even though I had those strong messages at home, I mean, I was also at the same time running around in tights and a leotard, and that's normal. So I had like these two conflicting messages in that ballet, it's all about your beautiful lines, and you wear as little as possible not distract from your artistry. So I was taught my body is an instrument. It is beautiful. It is art. But also at home and in church, it's like, oh, you need to cover it up. So it's two really conflicting messages. And as a teenager, an older teenager, I gravitated more towards ballet, the ballet mindset of like, my body's an instrument and it's beautiful. But I do remember a handful of instances where, I mean, one, I was young. I must have been 10 or 11. And I remember my friend Rachel at church got this really cute halter top.
Aww.
And I went out shopping with my aunt. She would come into town a couple times a year. And for our birthdays, she would always take us shopping and buy us a new outfit. I like JCPenney's because that was the cool thing at the time. And I saw this halter top at JCPenney's. And I was so excited because my friend Rachel looked so cute in it. And I was like, you know, I want this top. And she was like, no, we'd have to talk about that with your parents because that's inappropriate. A halter top as like an 11-year-old girl. And I understand like she felt like in between. And so she didn't want to make a judgment call like that for someone that's not her child. So she was trying to be responsible. But I remember going, oh, that's inappropriate. And like I never really had that thought about my clothing before. And then, I mean, I remember there was another time where my mom has like great high school friends that just never had kids or their kids are older. And so they would take us out shopping and just like do fun stuff with us. And she had another friend that took us out shopping and she wanted to buy us all swimsuits. And so I came home with a bikini because, again, ballet, my body is an instrument. It's beautiful. And my mom was like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. And we actually took it back and exchanged it. And I was so sad because it was so cute. But then after realizing, oh, you're revealing your body in a way that's not appropriate, like I felt uncomfortable. And then, I mean, my last traumatizing story to follow it up.
We all have just
I could just tell you. There was this one time that I had gone through a growth spurt. And so I was about the size I am now. And I had just finally like started getting boobs. And so I was young. I was like 13, maybe 14. I'm not sure. But I had this shirt. Me and my mom were running out to Brahms, if you're from Oklahoma or the Midwest, which is basically like, it's a little mini grocery store attached to a fast food restaurant, and they're famous for ice cream. Anyway, so we were just running to Brahms to get some like basic groceries real quick. And my mom was like, I'm not sure about that top. And because I'd grown a little bit of my belly, like barely anything was showing. And, so I was just like, I don't want to change. Like, we need to go real quick. Can we just, like, is this just good? And she was just kind of like, oh, fine, whatever. And we went, and there was this older man having, like, lunch there with who I would assume his grandchildren. And didn't think a second thought. And on our way out, my mom was like, did you notice that older man was looking at you? And I was like, no. And she was like, oh, it's because you were showing your belly. It's because of the shirt you're wearing. And I remember from then on, like, I was just like, okay, men are terrifying. And there's like there's no like line. And it's my responsibility. And I had already had that, but that's really when it was locked in. And I remember when I was probably 16 or 17, I did this show. It was Carousel. And I was one of the dancers in, you know, if you do any Rodgers and Hammerstein, that big dance scene that's like 11 and a half minutes. And our costumes were stockings and a corset and these little tiny frilly shorts that we had to wear nude thick tights underneath because the shorts were actually see-through. And I remember that was my moment of like, I feel empowered as a woman. I feel confident. This is art, and I'm actually not going to carry this forward anymore. Wow. And I actually had to walk through that going through ministry school, but then post-ministry school stepped back into that because I started working at Victoria's Secret. And it was all about lingerie, body positivity. You don't wear lingerie for men, you wear it for you. And so that, it feels like that process continued.
Yeah.
So what a trip, though.
And I think, too, like, I look back and I remember there's a culture among women or girls as well where we would like check each other.
We would
like,
judge each other.
Like, hey, your boobs are hanging out, or like, hey, your tummy's hanging out, or I remember
your shorts are a little short.
There's just this whole culture of like, let's check each other and make sure that we're not like, tempting men. I don't know.
And I remember that like in church too. Like everyone would check out what everyone was wearing. And like if you were in choir or up on the stage, or like myself, I sang backup vocals on Sundays, and it was like, oh, like, is your dress too short? Or like, if you're wearing pants, how tight are your pants? And like, I remember when leggings became a thing.
Don't even get me started on that.
And it was like the conversation for like 3 years. And it was like, should leggings be pants? Should leggings not be pants? And I'm just like, are they comfortable? Great. It's the new sweat. Like, I literally didn't care. But everyone else was like, I'm like, I literally wear see-through leggings every day with a one-piece swimsuit over it for ballet.
Everyone was judging each other so hard during that. I'm glad that leggings have become normalized now, but that was like the worst.
It was so bad.
And as it, and it's taught in the church. So like as a Christian, you're trying to navigate like listening to your elders and like being respectful and an honorable woman within the church community, but then also like, is it really a big deal? And like, is it okay if I wear it to yoga class or to work out, but it's not okay if I wear it like on a casual Saturday to the grocery store? So like, where's the line, and why does it matter?
You feel so trapped.
Yeah.
You feel so trapped and terrified, and that shame and dread of like, oh my gosh, like, I would never want to cause a brother to stumble. I would never want to imply certain things about myself, or even as an extension, my family. Yeah. Because of what I'm wearing. And it's like so much pressure.
Yeah. Or on top of that, you're ruining your testimony.
Oh,
like,
yes.
to other people.
Like, you're destroying your ability to share the
no
gospel.
one will be able to hear the gospel through your cleavage, essentially. And I mean, on top of that, it's telling you that your body is inherently just sexual all the time.
No matter what.
And like, no matter what you do, your body is an object of sex.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, and that
except cover up.
That lowers your view of your own body so much.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think really diminishing the beauty of your sexuality and diminishing the power of sex itself as well. And it's like, actually, we're not animals. Like, we're not animals.
Yeah. And we have self-control, and also sex shouldn't be something that's like this big bad. This
terrible
big, scary thing.
Yeah, like, oh, he had sexual thoughts about you. Like,
it's like,
that was okay. Like,
yeah, that's actually, that's like, normal.
Yeah.
That's actually normal as a person.
I remember sitting down with my mom, like, after I'd sort of processed through a lot of this, and I was like, I had gotten to a point, I told her this, I had gotten to a point where the only times I felt modest was when I felt ugly. Like when I was in sweatpants, when I hadn't washed my hair, when I didn't feel pretty. And like, not that you can't feel pretty in sweatpants and not wash hair, I'm not saying that, but like, I was always stuck in this tension of like, when I felt beautiful, I felt dangerous.
Yeah.
And so like, the only way I felt like I could avoid luring a man into my like dangerous sexual trap was like actually self-hate.
Making yourself like repulsive.
Yes.
I would just like to touch on that dangerous. Really, I think that's just power. And like, as women, we are powerful and beauty is powerful, but actually that's not a bad thing.
Sure.
And I mean, obviously we all have our process and we're all working through our own things, but I think for women, like, we should feel powerful.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be taught as a bad thing.
Right.
It's just the heart behind your power and what you use it for.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes me think of when I was growing up. I mean, I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up in, I guess, a relatively secular home, if you would call it that. And it wasn't until I became a Christian when I was like 15 years old and I started to actually think about how I dressed so much more. And all of these rules were all of a sudden being thrown at me, and I was being told my whole life growing up was like, oh, these things are fine to wear, like wear whatever, like whatever you feel good in. You look cute in those short shorts, you look cute in that strappy tank top, like you can wear a 2-piece, whatever. And then I came into the church and they were telling me, no, you can't wear these things. You can't come to church camp with us if you dress this way. You can't be on stage doing worship if you're dressed this way. Like, I was having these two very conflicting ideas coming at me from my home life and then from my church life, where I felt like I didn't look good because I was being immodest or because I was being too modest. So it caused it causes so much self-analysis.
Yeah.
It does.
And overthinking of something as simple as what you put on your body.
Yeah.
Which really should be a form of creative expression. It should be a form of accentuating yourself and feeling beautiful, and instead it turns into like a mind trip.
It's such a mind trip, and you you can't win. That's the thing. I think as we all have experienced that self-analysis, it's like there's no right answer.
Yeah. I think that so much of it is subjective. And so much of it is dependent upon where you are and what you're doing. I mean, you aren't going to wear a swimsuit in the same place that you're going to wear a business suit. Those two things don't go together, and it would be weird if you wore one in the context of the other.
I mean, if you want to wear a business suit to the beach, like, I'm 100% behind you, Emma.
You do.
I mean, I'd have to own a business suit first. But to sort of bring this all around, we have all had these experiences with modesty, with purity culture, with the ways that has messed with our minds. So I want to hear some about how you guys think about it now as 25-year-old women, as married women, as women who have gone through a lot of growth, and what you think about with the church and Christianity and all of this. What does it mean to be modest today?
I think for me in college, when I was kind of coming out of this sort of like mind trap that I was in, I realized the subjective nature of the whole concept. And this was, I would say, catalyzed by the comment from my father figure about my jeans being too tight. Because I was like, I can't please anyone. And in looking at it, I realized if we look around the world, like, women can't please everyone. There are people in the Middle East and in very conservative countries dressed from head to toe, total body shape cover up, and they're still being sexually assaulted, raped, treated like objects. You know, like, I mean, women in Turkey are just being murdered, and there's no justice for them. And so, and we have a huge child trafficking and sex trafficking problem. We have issues with abuse in churches of like pastor figures molesting children. So I realized, okay, maybe this actually isn't about, this isn't about clothing. This is a lust problem, and this is a sexualization of women problem that exists in our world and in our inherently sinful nature. And so I actually don't need to hold that responsibility anymore to like help a brother out, because I think that's how it was phrased for me, is like, yes, this is a man problem, but like as women we have to take responsibility. We can't let a brother stumble. But I think what I realized is like, oh, I don't think actually our clothing is preventing men from stumbling.
No.
And so that for me was like, okay, like, I don't, today, my conclusion, I don't think modesty as the Western American church understands it exists. I think it's a completely subjective thing that depends entirely on the context that you're in and the people that are around you. It's not, there's no solid definition for it.
I mean, for me, I think growing up in the church in purity culture, all those things, surprise for anyone that doesn't know out there, but you actually have to reverse all that once you get married. And you actually have to teach yourself, like, oh, it's okay for me to feel this way. It's okay for me to feel horny or turned on or sexually attracted to my husband. So really, I think my definition of modesty has unfolded the more I have unfolded my concept of sexuality and the way I understand it. Morgan Day Cecil, if you do not know her or follow her, I highly recommend it. She's incredible, but she talked a lot about recently how sexy is really your insides matching your outsides. And if you're accurately reflecting what's going on inside, then that is wholeness and that is sexy.
Yeah.
And that can change. That can one day be, you know, my hair hasn't been washed in 6 days and I'm in sweats. The next day it can be I'm wearing some booty shorts and some red lipstick and I look great. And I think the same thing comes into play with modesty. Our insides need to match our outsides. You need to feel comfortable, and whatever situation you're going into, just dress accordingly. And also, like, what do you need to feel like? Like, do I need to feel safe going into this meeting? Do I need to feel empowered going to the grocery store? Do I need to feel sexy going to the movies on this date? Like, what do you need to feel like, and how is your clothing going to support that? So that's kind of it's more abstract than it's ever been. I just remember, I did an internship in my 3rd year of school. And I remember my mentor, who was a man, setting me down and being like, Kelly, like, you really like things black and white. You're going to have to actually really learn how to embrace the gray, because most things in life are a lot of gray. And as a 1 on the Enneagram, I like to know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And I like to follow that exactly. And I launched this journey of being into a lot of gray. And I think modesty is that conversation that's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that ultimately it comes down to, are you respecting your body? Are you honoring your body?
Yep.
Are you presenting yourself in a way that you are proud of and that you love?
Yeah.
Like, that's really what it comes down to. And I think that us putting this on, this whole idea of modesty and the way that you dress onto women so much also actually degrades men, because it says 100%. To them,
1,000%.
you have no self-control.
Yeah.
We have to do this for you,
right?
Because you are animalistic.
Right.
Well, and that makes me wonder if that's why, we have sex trafficking problem because there's a demand for it.
Yeah.
Are we teaching our men, not that the behavior is acceptable, but that they can't necessarily help it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, raising tomorrow's men and that's leaders, we have to not only be like, it's not women's responsibility to make sure that you are comfortable and that you can keep it in your pants. It's actually your responsibility to make good decisions and to not objectify women and not to look at something and be like, I want that, and nothing's going to stop me from getting it.
Yeah. And that comes back to power and control and all of that we've already addressed.
Yeah. And so for all the Bible nuts who, like me, we're like, okay, what does the Bible actually say? I want to bring out 2 very key scriptures in this conversation. First one, I'll just read this. 1 Peter 3 and 4. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. And then the second one is 1 Timothy 2:9 and 10. I also want the women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, adorning themselves not with elaborate hairstyles or gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but with good deeds appropriate for women who profess to worship God. And so I think we have to look at not just the Merriam-Webster definition of modesty, but what the context that modesty is brought up in these two verses, which is it's talking about wealth and using clothing and jewelry to elevate your status. And Paul is saying, don't like puff yourself up with the things that you're wearing. Let that come out of your inner self.
Yeah.
Like make sure your heart inside is in alignment with the person that you are like projecting. And so I think like to me that is the definition of modesty, kind of like Kelly just said, is like, do you have inner beauty and do you understand who you are as a person, and are you allowing that to be output regardless of what you're wearing?
Yeah.
So, and I mean that doesn't mean like wear a bikini to church. I'm not saying like don't consider the cultural context of where you're going, but I think it does mean like let's stop judging each other about like the number of inches above our boob line, or you know the amount of belly that shows when you bend over to pick up a pen, you know, like it's like real life. Like
that's not real life.
I mean I've bent over so many times in my life and felt like I was being inappropriate. So like you should not have to feel inappropriate for bending over to pick something up. And so making sure that your inner self is elevating your outer self and not the opposite way around.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's it. What I'm hearing is it's a lot about intention. And in these two books that you mentioned specifically, I mean, he's addressing a specific problem in a specific culture, and I like how he just touches on it and then he backs up. And it's like, wow, in the church, we don't touch on it. It is shouted from the rooftops. Oh my gosh. And it is drilled into young women's minds, and it's debilitating. And it's, I mean, you're taught that clothing is an instrument to cover up. You're not taught that clothing actually is something that can be self-expressive and that helps support however you need to feel. And it's part of like matching the creative aspect of our creator, you know, like modeling after his creativity and his joy and his beauty. Like God is a beautiful God, and we reflect him. And so in our creativity and in our expression, we're actually like presenting worship to God. And I think like your body's a temple, like cover up. Like I don't think that's synonymous with the truth. Like I think like your body is a temple. It should be treated as such. Like a temple is a beautiful, well adorned.
Look at the temple in the Bible. It is elaborate and ornate and meticulously taken care of.
Absolutely. I mean, I had that exact same revelation, if you will, in my first year of ministry school, where we read through the entire Bible. And I remember reading about David building the temple, and I was like, oh wow, God, you didn't actually ask for this. It was a gift. And we look at clothing as practical, like, oh, this needs to serve a practical purpose. But really, like, if I'm God's temple, how much more so can I adorn myself with the right heart posture and intention? But it's like, oh my gosh, like actually God sees me as that. And like reading about the detail and like the time and money that went into it, it's like, oh, okay, like actually I get to take care of myself. I get to go, have a $75 massage. I get to go see a facialist or go get waxed or whatever, because it's like, actually that's me taking care of my temple and I get to feel good in it. And that's allowed.
It is.
Yeah, like Matthew 6, if he so adorns the lilies, like won't he surely care for you? Like I don't think that, like wearing plastic bags, not plastic bags, but like, sacks to cover up like our sexual dangerous form is reflective of God at all.
I mean, you look at the world and all of the scripture, God loves beauty. And God loves like he didn't have to make things beautiful the way they are, but he chose to because he's creative and he's an artist.
And he actually never shames beauty.
Yeah. No. And I think Paul, like, he's trying to clarify, like, hey, beauty is not a replacement for inner character.
Yes.
And they're different things. And I think that's what modesty is having character.
Yeah.
And not just like covering up with expensive jewel. Like he's not saying burn the pearls and throw out your earrings. He's saying, like, don't elevate yourself with those things. It's okay to be beautiful, but like the things that elevate you are what's inside.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I've landed on modesty. And again, like, to anyone out there, like, I'm not saying, like, let's go topless, like, destroy the patriarchy and free the boobies. Like, I mean, in some ways, yes. But like, I'm not telling anyone to do that, but like love your form. And not in, like, don't worship yourself, don't idolize your body, but like love yourself.
Yeah.
Care for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like a happier, more safe, beautiful place to be. And men, like, and even women, like, let's just be real, like, men are not the only people who lust, but
yeah, absolutely,
we have a responsibility to deal with that on our own. Not by ourselves, but on our own responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
manage your heart.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, ladies, thank you so much
for
welcome. Sharing your stories, for opening up about this, for talking about things that have been hard in our development and growing up, and the ways that we've navigated our bodies and the ways that we dress them. I actually would love to hear from you guys, our lovely woman being community. Share with us your stories with modesty, the ways that you have grown in your view of modesty now. We really, really would love to hear your stories and contribute to this conversation.
Yes, please.
So,
and also just for anyone out there, like, who, if you've been treated this way, if I've treated you this way, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, let's be kind to each other.
Absolutely.
I'm dedicated to being kinder to myself and to the people around me. And so, like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Same. Like, if you've been taught that your body is dangerous and that your body is not beautiful and you need to cover it up because, God forbid, you make someone lust, like, that breaks my heart, and I'm sorry for that. Like, your body is absolutely beautiful. It's a treasure. And you deserve to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
Amen to that, sister. All right. Well, then we're going to wrap this episode up, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.